Well, good evening, everybody. This is Dom Limited here, and tonight we're going to answer viewer questions. I'll be honest, most of the questions that the viewers asked were not subscribers. So basically, there's a couple of interesting questions. I mean, most of them didn't, or a couple of them didn't even pertain to the business or the office, or some of them wanted to know what I did or about the other job I do when I'm not here working. And one of the interesting questions is, what more do you like and what kind would you prefer? Well, personally, to answer the question, I'm not really wild about zero turns. I think they're actually, if you really want to do it, make your lawn look like a show lawn, a zero turn is not really the way to go. Sure, you can mow fast and you can whip around trees and you don't need to use a push mower for trim or a weed whacker very much. But the problem is, not only if you're not careful, you can leave divots in your lawn and you can leave tear marks. But actually, a zero turn, if you're not familiar with how the machine operates, or if or the machine's not in balance, and you're on steep hills and stuff, and you don't have a roll bar on the back side of the unit, and you flip that thing, you could really injure yourself and really cause significant damage. In a worst case scenario, you could kill yourself unintentionally on one of those things. I've used zero turns in the past. I've used Gravely zero turns. I've driven Hustlers. I've driven a Grasshopper, Kubota, John Deere. But they were nice. But I'm not really to be honest, I'm not a zero turn person. I'm more of a garden tractor, lawn tractor kind of guy. I think the problem with zero turn is you can tow stuff with them, but it's not really versatile for a lot of major applications. Sure, they make plows for them, and you can do some odds and ends with them, but it's not the same as having a big garden tractor with like a 20 horse Kohler engine or a 16 horse single cylinder cast iron engine or an Onan twin cylinder. Another question was, what brand would you prefer, and where would you get it? Well, it depends on what brand you're referring to. You got your cheap MTD consumer grade mowers. If you go to like retail store, Fleet Farm, or Lowe's, or Home Depot, or Sears, if you have one in the area. Now we'll get into an interesting topic here. So if you go to like Fleet Farm or Lowe's or Menards, and they got Craftsman like hand tools and lawn and garden stuff. Now when you go to Lowe's and you see the big lineup of the Craftsman riding lawnmowers and stuff, and then you go to Sears, one thing I've noticed when you go to Sears and then you go to Lowe's and look at all their lawn and garden stuff, you kind of notice that the designing of the tractors are slightly different. Even though they're all made in the same place, but it's like I think each store has a different specification that they want to use. Actually, all retail stores, when they order merchandise like that, they usually tell the manufacturer, okay, can you make it? I want this unit at a set price of like $1,200. And the manufacturer's like, sure, we can make it for that price. So that's what all your lawnmowers that come from big box stores, they're built cheap because not only if they built them well, customers wouldn't be back buying them again. A lot of the push motors even nowadays are basically like the cheapy ones are like throwaways. Ones for like $120, $150, or a lot of the engines on them. Some of them have plastic gears inside, from what I've heard. I cannot confirm that because I have not bought a new lawnmower in years, not from a box store anyway. Usually most of the stuff I pick up is at yard sales, like old lawn boys with a 2-cycle, old Sears Craftsman push motors from like the 90s and the 80s, old Murrays I've messed around with. I've messed around with Montgomery Ward's Kmart branded equipment, Lawn Chief, a lot of different stuff, Toro stuff. And you're thinking, well, gee, he was a computer guy. I didn't know he was into small engines and that. Well, basically, if you do one thing all the time, it gets boring. You got to make your life interesting. So you just, when you're not busy doing computers and you're not busy working, and sometimes when I'm on the road and that, if there's yard sales and that, I'll stop. That's the beauty of having a van. You can pick up small stuff like that and bring it home. That's what I do a lot of times. Or stop at a thrift store or something, and if it happens to be on my way home, or if it's like 5 miles out of the way or something, on my way, I'd stop and take a look, and you never know what you're gonna find. So sometimes I do that, and it's very interesting looking. You never know what you're gonna come across, or what town you'll come across in what thrift stores. And to be honest, the best thrift stores are the ones up in Oshkosh and Appleton area, and even Green Bay and Sheboygan. Manitowoc, those stores are kind of all right, but a lot of times everything's picked over at the Manitowoc locations, and the prices. The only place that's actually or thrift store that are decent at Manitowoc is not so. I don't even go to the Salvation Army one, but I go to St. Vincent de Paul over on Chicago Street. That one's a decent one. I don't go that often, but I don't know, rare occasional stop in there when they're open. But due to COVID-19, none of the thrift stores have been open, so I'm itching for all that stuff to open again, so I got to stop in there and just take a look and see if there's anything interesting. And then another good one is Repeat Performance. That one's over on the other side of Manitowoc. That one, I don't always find stuff in there, but I'd have to say here in Sheboygan, the Goodwill over on Taylor Drive, or by Taylor Drive, is pretty good. And then you got St. Vincent de Paul over on the other end, off of, there's a Culver's right there. I can't think of the road that's off, but usually that one, it's a small one, but it's not junky stuff that's in there. Well, I'll say thrift stores for another topic, but basically, there's a lot of interesting stuff you can find at yard sales, and it's even like if you can find like yourself a Sears Craftsman rider for under $50, and sometimes it's even minor stuff that's broke on it and you can fix it. The only thing that But you gotta be careful of when you're buying stuff like that. Is when they take the batteries out of it and it says, "Oh, it just needs a new battery," but then you see the engine's all scuzzy looking and there's an oil leak, and you gotta be aware of stuff like that because it might have a blown rod or there might be no compression. But if you're buying it for a parts tractor and like the tranny's good on it, and or you just want it for parts, that's fine. Or if if you know that the whole tractor is good, the steering and everything is good, and you're handy enough to put a different engine on there, then it could potentially be a good. But as far as like an MTD tractor, I would still have to go with a Craftsman. Not because I'm loyal to the brand, but I've had quite a few of them, and they're pretty much reliable. I've even used some from like the 80s, early 90s, late 90s, mid 2000s, and they cut decent. They work decent. It's a tractor. It's not going to let you down. Yes, it is a box store tractor. I'll give you that. But now if I was really going to go all out on a garden tractor, I would either go with Simplicity, not a brand new one. I get one from like the 70s or 80s or 60s. The old classic wheel horse garden tractors like the C165 or C160. Sure, they're primitive tractors, but they're built like tanks. The frame is cast iron. Everything on it is all metal. The only thing that's plastic is like the handles on the attachments and the throttle and the choke and stuff, but they're not bad tractors. I have two wheel horses, and they both have 16 horse long life Kohlers on them. And I use them as work tractors, and they work pretty well. Push snow with them. I got a blower attachment that I use on blower. I'm not that impressed with. It's only a single stage, and it only blows the snow like a foot away. Well, it's not brand new, so the blower's seen its better days. I didn't buy it new. One came from a dealer down in Howard's Grove, and the other one was a Craigslist. The C165 was from a dealer in Howard's Grove. It's a Kubota dealer, and the other tractor came from Craigslist from a guy in Branch. Out of the two tractors, each one has good features on it. The C165, the headlights are superior and excellent when it comes to at night or in the dark. It illuminates very well. The C160, no, that's the C165 that's got the good, decent headlights. C165 is like an 81, and the C160 is like a 74. But that one, the headlights are very dim. But both tractors are very, very solid built. The only thing that had to get replaced on a C160 was the rear differential went out on it. Actually, the clutch for the 8-speed manual went out on it. But if that's the worst that happens to the tractor, and eBay had the part, so I just tore the back end apart. And now I'm not a small engines expert here. It's kind of something that you do on the side, and you kind of enjoy getting your hands dirty and working on stuff like that. But I would never take upon working on other people's equipment. I just kind of do it on the side just for fun. So basically, and even well, back to the tractor topic, but even Cub Cadet, I'd even buy a Cub or the old 70s Cubs. Those are nice tractors. And the other kind of mower that's not so popular, but I think is really well built, are those front mounted tractors where you got your mower deck on the front and then your steering is on the rear end of the tractor. It's a lot of your golf courses and your show lawn, or like your estates and your show gardens, uses tractors like that. A lot of the small engine manufacturers that made them discontinued them because nobody was buying them because everybody wants zero turns. The only company that you can still buy a small articulated tractor like that is Husqvarna. Makes one. I have not driven one of theirs. The only ones I've ever driven were Toro, Groundmaster 120 or something like that. It's a very small tractor. Had I think it was like an 18 horse. Wasn't a Briggs. There was some odd engine that was on the tractor, and only a 44-inch deck, but it had a really nice cut. And when you were going over very awkward terrain, what's nice about it is you got the floating wheels on the front, and it really contours nice to the land, and it doesn't. A lot of those tractors don't scalp. Like with a fixed deck, like on a zero turn in that, sometimes if you got uneven ground, you'll scalp it, or you get an imperfection cut. But those tractors, when you got them where the wheels are on the front there, you can any bump or something, it contours to the lawn a lot better than a zero turn would. And I'm not bashing zero turns, but I just, when you don't have a lot of good experience with them, and you see a lot of poor results from them, not from acting childlike and doing burnouts and stuff like that, but and when you go up and down hills with them, like with those articulated tractors and garden tractors, you have more control when you're on a steep grade. But those zero turns, sometimes you can get into a spin out and not only ruin the lawn and tear it out, but there's a lot of risk and injury. Now, the garden tractors, you could flip those too, but the chances of that happening are less likely than, because it, like with a zero turn, both wheels spin at the same time. But like with a garden tractor, you have a differential in the back that one tire is going counterclockwise and the other one's going the opposite of. So one wheel is going right and the other one's going left. And the reason they do that is so that when you're cutting along in that when you're turning one way or the other, that both tires aren't going the same way and it won't tear up your lawn. So it kind of gives basically, it's hard to explain. I'm not an engineer or a sales rep that has to grit through his teeth lying to every customer, telling them everything they want to hear about the product that they're buying. And there are sales guys I've talked to in the past that they told you whatever you wanted to hear just so they can make a sale. And then you get something and then you're disenchanted with how it performs. I've been there, done that. I've never done that to anybody. Even when I sell computers and that, I don't grin through my teeth and saying oh yeah, this thing will do whatever you want to do. Pretty much when it comes to customers, and I'm brutally honest with them. It's like I had one computer in here. It was only a Pentium, like a 2.3 gigahertz processor. It was a Windows 7 era computer, and they wanted to do video editing. They wanted to do major gaming. They wanted to do major tasks, and I'm like, you know, for $55, you're getting what you're paying for. You're getting a basic web browsing computer. Just because the price is right doesn't mean that it's going to be capable of doing gaming and very hardcore intensive applications. This kind of computer is strictly meant for browsing the web, emails, viewing your pictures, an occasional Word document or two. But it's not meant to be a hardcore. And you got some people that they don't listen, that once they got an idea in their head, and that's it. So, and then you got a couple different variations. You got electric lawn tractors. You have your traditional gasoline. I would have to say if you're going to go the diesel route, either go with a Kubota, like a 3-cylinder diesel. I've used GF 1800s as another articulated. Those are actually very nice. For what you spend on those, you could buy yourself a nice, fully loaded Ford Focus when it was new. And if you wanted all the options, you could buy yourself a really nice pickup, like a Dodge pickup truck. That's not a contractor's truck for as much. By the time you bought all the accessories that were offered for the tractor, you're probably talking about $55,000 by the time you're done if you bought everything, single thing that was ever offered strictly for that machine. So the one I've used had like 4-wheel drive on it, and so it's a very Kubotas and John Deere's and some of the other manufacturers that made equipment like that. You got what you paid for. You bought quality. It wasn't just retail junk. So I hope that was it. I was able to answer that question. So the next question is, are you ever going to get merchandise for your store? Now, what do you mean by merchandise? Do you mean computers and stuff? Well, we always get computers in. TVs, we always get those in. We got other stuff that's here on a limited time. Well, I'd have to look into what you mean by merchandise. Well, let's go to the next question here. Do you think that you would ever get T-shirts and or merchandise T-shirts and hats and stuff like that? Well, at this point in time, the easiest way I could put this is, unless I had a high enough demand for stuff like that, at this time I don't think I'm gonna invest a lot of money into having custom stuff made up, unless I knew that people are that crazy about it, and I could make a couple $100 a day off of that merchandise. Then I probably would have order forms here when people came in. Now, as far as like employee shirts go, I'm thinking about getting some custom polos and some t-shirts and crew neck sweatshirts made up. But as far as, well, the thing is, when you're on a job site and that, you want to identify yourself as who you are. And you kind of do your own advertising. But as far as customer merchandise and that retrospective hats and shirts and sweatshirts and stuff like that, or mouse pads or anything like that, I don't have that kind of a budget that I can afford to do that kind of stuff. But maybe eventually we can make that happen. But for right now, it's not really a goal. If you understand what I'm trying to say, it's a nice idea, but I can't really afford to do that right now. Things are, just because I got my tax return and a stimulus check doesn't mean I got to earmark that money for rent and for slow times here. So that's, maybe down the road we'll try it for a while and see how that pans out. And if it doesn't pan out, then I would not continue doing that. So I hope that answered their question. Okay, let's see what the next question is. If you were going to buy yourself a new computer, what would it be? Actually, there's a lot of good computers out there that I would buy for myself. I wouldn't spend anything quite foolishly like $50,000 or anything like that. It's kind of dry in here, so that's what I should probably get myself some water. Yeah, I'm gonna get some. Honestly, I would buy an HP, but the problem is a lot of their quality control has gone downhill. And I would not buy a consumer grade computer. I would get a business machine. I don't need something with a lot of thrills and bells and whistles. But it would actually have to be an i7. I wouldn't go anything below that. I would probably, minimum would be 16 gigs. I would have to have a graphics card on it. More than 2 gigs. And I would probably have like a couple of SSDs inside. And then maybe like a 4 terabyte drive for storage. I like small form factors, but the problem is you're kind of limited on what kind of cards you can put inside because of the sizing. So I would probably have to go with a mini tower in that case then. But there are different versions of the business machines. You got your Pro desks and you got your Elite desks. And then you got your Z workstations. And for the amount of stuff I do, I think an Elite desk would probably be more than adequate. And if I went the Dell route, I would either be an Optiplex or Precision or a Vostro. But then again, like I said, I'd have to have at least 16 gigs of RAM, Core i7, or a AMD Ryzen 7, or an A12 processor. But I'd have to have a graphics card for sure, at least over 2 gigs. And then the storage would be nice. And if I went Lenovo, it'd either be a ThinkCentra or a ThinkPad. So I don't know if I would ever buy an Asus or an Acer. I'm not really familiar with those. I understand they're great computers, but I've worked on several Asus and Acers, and they're all right. They're not the crappiest computers out there. I just when you're used to mainly a few kinds, you kind of tend to grow on you. And I've even worked on computers that are no longer manufactured, like the absolutely everlasting E-Machine. I worked on a lot of those over the years. I've worked on compact, like the Versarios and the Desk Pros, or something to, I can't remember the model names, but Omnitek's I've worked on a small number of those. The MPC Client Pro. So I would not use those as a daily driver because one, they've been out of support for the last 20 years, just about, and a lot of those are only Pentium 4 that they were made up until ones I worked on were like Pentium 4s, Pentium 3s, Pentium 2s. If you're a vintage collector or hobbyist, then in that retrospect, yes, I would recommend those models. And even the old Gateway 2000s and earlier Gateways were quite well, and Packard Bells and Micro Systems by Santex or Microsystems by Quantex rather. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. And if I was going to get a laptop, I would either get a Z book or an Elite book or a Pro book, Dell Latitude or the Precision, or the Lenovo ThinkPad or ThinkStation. Would you ever consider, okay, the next question is, would you ever consider buying a Mac? Yes, I've actually thought about investing in a Mac. But the problem is they're very expensive. And some of the applications that I need for Windows will not work on Apple products. So that's kind of a limitation. For video editing, Mac would be perfect, better than Windows. But when you're on a fixed check month to month, and you're hanging on for dear life to keep your business open, you kind of don't have the kind of money to spend on big and expensive equipment. And the thing is, you got to start out small. You can't get it all at once. It doesn't work that way. You gotta work for what you have. You can't just have that stuff handed to you on a silver platter and say, "Well, have at it. Here you go." Eventually, someday, maybe I'll have one, but for right now, that's not going to be a thing. Let's see if I got any other questions. No, that pretty much wraps that up. Well, thank you for the questions, and that was fun. We'll have to do that again very soon. So I hope everybody enjoyed the viewer question stream. Everybody that participated, I'm sure it was interesting for you as well. God bless. Stay safe. And we'll see you very soon.